Okay, so welcome back to Conversations That Count Part 2, because Shanen took us right into a really powerful content of real life stuff at the end of last session. So I've actually grabbed some of that information quite directly, the words you use, Shan, just to bring us into the space again.
Yes.
Shanen actually said, these are his words, and I've taken it down. I remember being a recipient of a conversation that impacted my life. At that moment, and then you sort of said it turns your life upside down, and you now see that the future differently to how you may have seen your future to look like before the conversation. And then you went on to say, and this is beautiful, none of us are really taught how to deal with situations when it happens to you. And that was in the context of a difficult, of a hard conversation, an important conversation, or a conversation that counts. How to deal with it emotionally to help. And then you mentioned, if I had have known how to deal with it emotionally to help you through that journey, I may have been able to overcome things a lot quicker or sooner. Ultimately, what you're saying there, and you reiterated again, you said being a recipient of a hard conversation that you weren't really ready for. And then Alex also brought in, as it's happening, different than when it's happened.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're turning this into that acknowledged process. Then also, you took it to the flip side, being the instigator of a life-changing conversation. So there's kind of two parts here. And I'm asking the entire group, shall we go to the first one first, and then we can have a conversation around the other one? How does that feel?
Yeah, great.
All right. So we've had 24 hours or thereabouts to kind of have it in our periphery, to chew over it or not even think about it. Any which way is perfect. It did bring for me a memory of a conversation, because I was searching through what one really impacted my life that I didn't see coming. And my one was a redundancy. I hadn't ever comprehended it. I just hadn't. And it was 1998. And I really respected my manager. I had deep respect for the business owner and manager of this company. And she actually delivered, when I look back now, her leadership in that moment was absolutely beautiful. It was really done well. But the impact was huge to me. It was that feeling of that's how I bring my income in. But I have no idea what to do from here. And it just turned my whole being inside out. I didn't react very beautifully at the time. I just wasn't very graceful. But even in that meeting, it's not that I wasn't great. I had no words. I had nothing. It was just like, what are you saying? What is it? And then I was to work my 2 weeks out, and I was like, well, I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted nothing to do with this magnificent thing that I've spent 2.5 years being a part of building. And going from, it's like the flip in values was so, I can only articulate it now, but it was so strong. I went from loving what I was doing to just a pure blah. Now it's become my enemy. Now it's become the thing that's done this to me. I went really victim on it. Not even in the meeting at that very moment. That was sort of overnight and over sleep. And yes, I talked and reached out to other people, and I actually had a chat with a lawyer and who I'd worked for years before, and he gave me the legality. So I looked for all of those aspects, and then I was a little bit more empowered with some information, and I came back in for a conversation because I don't believe she'd actually at that time understood the legalities. So she received that very well and decided to do a redundancy, because she was just bringing my job to an end. Now, what's interesting is I wasn't really coping at all. even though I had those conversations with people. But what she said to me, man, it's also driven my life forward, because she said to me, Karyn, you have to understand, because I was effectively not being graceful in the office. What you have to understand is how you deal with this is going to make a real difference in your career moving forward. And so in a way, she re-empowered me. They weren't easy words to hear at that time, but in a way, she re-empowered me to find behaviors that would work, and to, rather than just be in victim, to find other choices that I could go to. And so there was the gift, there was the harshness of it, there was the reality of it. It was connected to money, it was connected to my belonging in the company. I didn't have anything else that I could have thought of to do from there. And then, of course, time changes, and it set my career off on a different path, in fact, to kind of what I'm doing now. So it was a great thing as it turned out, but I wasn't ready for it. And it certainly felt like I'd been dumped into a huge ocean, and organising everything through that was quite significant. So that's one I have that's very clearly fits that, being a recipient of a difficult conversation, which I know would have been difficult for her. Now I know it. And yeah, it just fits that criterion that you mentioned before. I hadn't been taught, but in ways she guided with a few words. Does that make sense? In ways she guided, she just gave me a boundary for those 2 weeks to work out. She offered some sense of work within this space. So yeah. Anyone got one of their own?
I have one where a story where both sides, I'm involved in both sides, being the recipient and the teller. Because ironically, after listening to what we were talking about, the content just a minute ago, there's both sides, being the person who has something they have to share, and the person who has to receive it. So just make it a little bit clean somehow. So Karyn and I were up in Auckland on a little mission, and picking up some outside patio chairs, like white French type, cast iron or cast aluminium seats. And I got a phone call while we were up there saying my dad had a heart attack, and that happened at his home, and that in Whangarei, and that they had treated him in Whangarei, and they put him in a chopper, and he'd gone to Auckland and into Central, and he'd already had a procedure, and he'd been awake for 2 hours, and that he was deteriorating. And he rang none of us. He didn't want to worry us. And so I'm the oldest of the family. He'd spoken to his wife, Human, and as a point of contact, a doctor then rang me. It's not cool, and I don't know if there's anything that can ever prepare you for that type of conversation, apart from at that particular time for me, it was probably a responsibility, because I knew and no one else in my family knew. So I would say responsibility at that point was I have to then, my task or my role is then to pass the information on. And for anyone who has have to, that goes through that, that level of responsibility is really helpful till it's not, because you still have to find a way to cope yourself. So I did that. That was part of it, and that's only part of the story, because the conversations and the ones you don't want to hear don't stop in that scenario. And to be the teller and to hear the shock on the other end of the phone. And then on another conversation, might hear the anger on the other side of the phone, and how people cope. And yeah, and it's perpetual. It's for those situations, for anyone who's experienced it with a bit of ill health in a serious way, when a person's coming to the end of time, it's bloody consistent. It just keeps going. There's a level of numbness, I'm guessing. Like, I guess if I think about it, there's a level of numbness that comes across, and I actually didn't want to be receiving the phone calls, I suppose. You don't want to take them, you don't want to make them. Yeah, and for me, I guess I'm lucky enough to have a pretty good base understanding that we live our lives, and we're born, we come in, we go out, we live a journey. And I have a pretty good balance of I don't have a fear around death, and I think that's what helped me in that situation with those phone calls and with those bits and pieces, because it doesn't incorporate a fear for me. I feel the loss for everyone else, and I feel the loss for myself. And so anyway, the last phone call I had, which was the one that probably tipped me over the edge, was a month after he died, and the hospital had made mistakes. So there was the medical field is relatively responsible for his passing. He's one of the smaller statistics of the problems of outcomes of stuff. Anyway, I got a phone call from the hospital after everything had settled down. I was doing good. I got a phone call from the hospital about a month later, apologising for his death. And that was hard. Just when I thought I'd dealt with it all, just when. Let's do another one. So, interestingly enough, from that aspect of the person making the phone call, it's their job. And a person who has that job of making the phone calls, they're generally pretty good at it, And yeah, it's just sort of at the moment, though, I can imagine that, I guess if I was to think about similarities for me and how I cope, there's plenty of employers that said they're come to work. At the moment, there's plenty of people that are saying, well, actually, we can't pay you the 80% the government wants to. We can't keep our doors open. there's so many conversations at the moment about covering medical, covering all aspects, and someone's making that phone call and someone's making that decision. How the recipient handles it. You know, I guess sometimes with anger, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with tears, sometimes they just go to the fridge. You know, have a beer. I think anybody that has actually is genuinely interested in their life and how they live it will draw from every positive experience in their life to help them get through it, even if it's subconsciously, even if it's from a part of them that they don't even know yet, because we are survivors. Anyway.
Nice share. Thank you for that, Boxer. Wow. Some tough conversations.
Yeah, and that's only last year.
Well, last year. Wow.
You know, he died how many days after we got married?
3 weeks.
3 weeks after we got married. And so that was in conversation too. At least he got to see me get married. You know, He came down, he was well, he was fit, you know. Wow. Yeah.
He came down. He enjoyed himself.
So, yeah, we definitely reflected in those times on the amazing moments that we've had. So there was a lot of that too. There was levity. There was, So I guess that was everybody helped me, if they could, if I let them.
That's a really, really true and honest space. Because, I mean, a cat, if it gets hurt, most often will disappear. Yeah, you don't actually really see a cat, whereas a dog may actually come and show you. You know, like, this is just an example. So humans have the same thing. Some people will withdraw completely and work it out within themselves, and other people will completely and share with every single person they come across effectively. And neither way is right or wrong. It's just literally processing all the different fundamental aspects, all the multi-dimensional aspects of something that turns into that impacts our life.
It's funny because going back to that conversation about yesterday also that we had, which was, how you doing? Yeah, good. So in that situation, when you've got this going in the background, I'm going, do you really fucking want to know? And then, yeah, good's a good answer. You know, sorry to swear, folks. It's just sometimes, you know, it's like a fizzy bottle and you give it a shake or you don't know where your mate gives it and then you pop the top off the beer and go, you know, we don't always need that either.
It's so true. Sometimes my interactions with people have been, you know, you're just like, whoa, something else is there. Are you? And you actually, eye to eye, are you actually okay? No, stop it. And it starts the process. It starts the physical bottle. Yeah, and then someone feels seen, connected with, and it just spills out. Doesn't even spill out necessarily in words. I'm thinking of multiple friendships that I have or clients, that sort of thing. And it just spills out, and it's just this spillage and tears or conversation in and of itself in a safe, trusting aware space helps the healing process for some people.
Mm.
For some people.
None of this is prescriptive to all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and I like what Boxer was saying. You got to find your own sort of coping strategy or your own way to work through that, and only you know what that is for you, and whether or not you let others in to help you. So you're sort of like the lead navigator in your own journey. But I also liked how Boxer said, he distinctly said or identified conversations, hard conversations, or conversations that matter are happening right now. Right in the midst of this lockdown, there's heard of some conversations that have gone down around career, around employment. There's also around health. Health is a big one currently at the moment. There's some tough conversations are being had, and as I was going through the different life areas, such as social, career, family, spiritual, physical, education, and in each of those life areas, there's some difficult conversations that are happening currently at the moment.
yes.
Being a recipient of those, and one recently was the news that my auntie had cancer. Had already known that, but during the lockdown with the new rules around that, it sort of prevented or stopped me from going to be a part of that grieving process. And for me, that's something that's real important to me. And it's the first tangi or funeral I haven't been at that's been a close family member. And, it's been quite difficult but also difficult in terms of I can't support my other family members in that grieving process as well. And in our family makeup, each person has a role that plays in the whole process. And it was just different. It was just real difficult to have. And these being recipients, and there are levels of conversations that matter. And I was just thinking when Boxer was talking, because in all of our life areas, any information can be quite pivotal or can be quite difficult, depending on the level of value we give it. Because we all have these life areas that we participate in and be a part of. And I believe, respectively, each area could have a conversation that's real tough, that really matters to you. Because obviously it matters because you place a lot of value on it. But like Box was talking about his experience that he's had over life, his life experience and his ability to acknowledge death and where death plays in the cycle of life, and he's has built a belief around that has prepared him for certain situations moving forward. And like he said, when it's a close family member like that, nothing really prepares you. But if that's sort of the worst of it, he'll be more prepared in the future at different levels of that. But yeah, no, there's some tough conversations being had at the moment, and quite recently, and similar to what you and Boxer have shared, Karyn, similar experience I've had in those situations. and I keep going back to or thinking of the value that I place on that information as a person. And, you know, with experience, you hope comes wisdom.
Yeah.
And knowledge too. And that's something that that I'm grateful for, Karyn. I'd like to say grateful for the knowledge that you've given me in this area, in this space, because that has really helped me. And I'm not perfect by any means, but in my mind, I'm probably the closest to perfection. Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
According to me, in my world, because you're perfect in your world.
You're perfect in my world too. You're the total package.
I will be. I just need to pick up on my singing. Just need to improve my singing, but I'll get there.
Bro, I believe you're a good singer. Just have to wait for you to believe.
Thank you. Yes.
I think I'm on a different note, because my thing always starts with me, and so that real hard conversation, it was up on the container, and I'm going forward and back for 15 minutes trying to go off the container, and you're just going through of how it's all going to go, and then Boxer comes over and he's like, "Oh, bro, it's that little bit of light in between you, the container and the ramp, that you're scared of." And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty unnerving." And I put my bike down. I was like, "Oh, no, let's just move the whole ramp." And he goes, "Don't be a pussy."
I did say that.
And I go, "Yeah, don't be a pussy." So I sat up there again until I went off it. And that was that thing that I'd say to myself, but I hadn't yet.
Yeah.
You know, it was probably more the thing that my mates would say to myself, to each other, and you know, it just creates it to happen. That sort of, "You won't." Yeah, well. And I needed that from an external, and like, we didn't make some adjustments to get me over that gap though. But yeah, it was still a bit unnerving going towards it.
I imagine.
But still, on the fly, if I was going on the fly, I wouldn't have even blinked at that, You would have just been like, bloop. But it's because you're like stationary, you know, trying to be as safe as possible while getting an adrenaline rush. And yeah, it was just that, don't be a pussy, you know, like, yeah, actually, Alex, come on, pull it together and let's do this. Again, adding to that internal conversation. Because
it was internal, but I heard it from 50 metres away. I was knowing the Lord, and I suddenly went, "Oh, what?" And I went, I said, "You'll still be there, I know, in a few minutes. I'll just finish this lawn." And it was cool. It was, and just so everyone knows, I wasn't teasing him badly. It was pussy in a positive way, as a matey, frickin', because I'm also the safety officer. Yeah, I'm also the safety officer, but has to sign off his inventions.
I have a spanner.
What?
I have a spanner to put into the works for a conversation.
Oh, shit.
I was just going over none of us are really taught how to deal with these situations when it happens to you. And then I was like, oh my goodness me, we would have been, we just weren't aware of it. So our learnings would have come from our parents and our caregivers' reactions to similar and different things. People who we looked up to or situations we had been around would have set in place some kind of map, useful or not useful, but it would have set up some kind of reference for us. Now, it may be a totally untapped reference, but it will actually be there. Now, we may respond completely opposite to that on the very basis that we didn't like what happened, or we may have an exact reaction. I don't know if anyone else other than me has been, oh, you're just like your mum, or you're just like your dad, or you're just like someone else someone knows. And that's that referencing point for them, or referencing point for self. It's an interesting process. So we will have been unconsciously taught through events those, and then sometimes things are happening to everyone else and it's just like you just carry on in your world. But when that same event touches you, now it becomes applicable to you that's, walking around in your body, and you have a sense, and I'm going to use a lack sense in this. There's a sense of loss, or there's a sense of lack, loss to your own personality, loss to a life you thought you were going to have, or a lack of what was there before is no longer going to be there. And pretty much that would be an underwriting thing that turns our life upside down. It's like, hang on, it's not the way it was before.
Do you think there's a point where a child leaves the parental net? I mean, because I like the concept that a child can go home anytime it wants. Generally, through their lifetime, they get to a certain point and, go home, visit, curl up on the couch, do nothing, do whatever to process. Don't even need to talk. There's a safe space to go and just be there. And then all of a sudden, a switch flicks where you're on your own. Like you're out of the parental net.
Yeah.
So
and you're the responsible one. And
then you find yourself getting news or getting information or being the teller, and then getting into that point of, oh fuck. Mm. Or just as a concept, because in my mind I see so many young people, whether it be at university or whatever, if they have the luxury or the ability to be able to go home to their parents, mum or dad, doesn't matter where, and just curl up on the couch when something goes wrong, or they break up with their boyfriend, or it's happening every day, right?
Yeah, it does. And even to older brothers or older sisters, or an auntie that you can trust, or an uncle, there does tend to be that go to a place of, what would you call it? Of knowing?
Safe.
Yeah.
Mm. That place where,
like a cat,
it's fully unconditional.
Yeah.
And yet
that's provided that is available for that family, though. Hey.
Exactly. For those who get to actually experience that, and many don't. And you've just got to find your coping mechanisms on your own, or within a different society, whether it be other groups of associations, the birds of a feather flock together type. That's actually pretty big.
Mm.
Yeah, I can sort of I like the spanner that you've chucked in. You've chucked in, Karyn, and then initially I was against that spanner when it got thrown in there. And I was like, I was just listening to it, and I was just trying to identify how that sort of sit, but then I can see how that could be. So like you said, if you're showing, or the examples that have been shown to you growing up may have not been useful, and then it's easy now to understand or see why an unuseful approach to handling a situation is repeated. Mm. Generational. Because like what Box is saying, if you do have that support, or a safe place to go to, or a safe home, or safe network, or a parent, as you're dealing with or within a family environment, dealing with certain situations, and they happen, and they have a way of, dealing with it, or a strategy that they use. You can see how you can adopt that strategy unconsciously and take that on and moving forward. And in the same token, I can see how if a coping strategy has been unuseful, we can take that on as well.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, and being the same, like yeah.
So
Yeah.
no matter how we deal with it, we actually deal with it all.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Good, bad, or otherwise, we actually deal with everything in the best way we possibly can. Everyone does. So when we're referencing the how to deal with those situations, it kind of comes to that ability to breathe or swim within those emotional moments, or to actually not feel so done to actually feel the emotion, and then organize our way through, because the reactionary stuff within the emotion it's just energy moving through our body. When this is very much my model of the world, and you probably don't agree, and that's okay. It's like when I was fearful of a feeling welling up inside of me, or I try to push it down, it doesn't work for me. It is actually better for an emotion to run freely very quickly, because then I'll move through it fast. Me personally, if I try and put something, a little lid on it, and push it to the side, it'll pop up somewhere else. And I get surprised, and people around me get surprised. So my version of working with emotions, no matter the difficult situations or the easy situations I'm in, I have to be very aware of the flow or the flood, and have it have short expressions that are as useful as I possibly can. When I didn't understand that, those expressions would sit in murky water, muddy water, and I would think more thoughts around that, and I would then feel bad about that, and then I'd think more thoughts around it, and I'd add to it, and I'd offer to myself conversation with other people that reiterated that I was right, and my emotion got muddy and murky as well. Rather than a clean flowing emotional experience. So that's my version of the world of what I've experienced when I've been in situations, whether I activated or whether I was a receiver, that a conversation that countered didn't stay at the countered, it escalated to more of an argumentative space and place. And then it's about being right or being wrong or being wronged or blah blah. This was in the more in the past aspect, and that wasn't useful for myself or anyone, because it was just a breeding ground for more yuck. It just created that kind of I'm sort of imagining the mosquito environment where the mosquitoes are just birthing on the place, and so irritations are everywhere instead of a fresh flowing emotional connectivity to what's going on in life. Okay, this doesn't feel good right now, but I know that it'll all work through. That's a whole different process now compared to what I may have languished.
There's a couple of, while I'm sitting here listening and thinking and processing, and I think about the things that we've all talked about, and I see values come in here quite strongly again, and having a conversation with someone who doesn't even have remotely the same values, and trying to deliver them something from your value system or your value is just never going to be cool, you know. And then I think about another perspective when Alex talks about, you know, what do you make matter? You know, it's a different value set again. I mean, you know, and how all these things are happening. We were talking yesterday, Alex, how much more difficult it is to have a conversation over text without being able to see, the physicality of a person's thought process or nature or behaviour, especially when you're used to spending so much time with them.
Or tonality.
Physical.
Their physicality.
Yeah.
And how they're presenting it. Yeah, it's huge.
And there's so much
huge
miscommunication.
Huge miscommunication, and you can send something in a feeling, and the feeling can go with the message, but you know, it's only interpreted for what state that person's in
on the other end.
Yeah.
Right? And that happens a lot now. Like how often are we shifting from the distance of the conversation because I can't get into that, but I can send them a message. You know, there's the fronting up stuff is just, then it gets into the gut. So motivation. Some people fire up straight away and they just, I'm going round there. And then some people just don't. It's just, and I love the way that people are just who they are.
Yeah.
And then I love talking about it too. So, you know, yeah, and just those perspectives are all, I don't like, in this technology era that we're in, and like Alex is more in it than we are for his formed life, and you know what happens in the future. I mean, maybe video calling will just become more of the norm as technology changes. And
that's cute. That was sci-fi.
Yeah, for us,
real.
You know, loving the way that. And I don't know that even makes it easier to have a conversation with all that's. I know we video message now. We're video talking now. Kind of to me, it's like back in the day when everyone got together to watch a home movie. You know, because this is where we're at now. We're gathering together, and then the technology is going to go a different direction again. You know, and it'll be faster, smoother. Conversation will still be difficult.
Because it's different views of the world. So you've been specifically quiet. Would you like to offer something different?
No. Well, two things pop into my head when you process information. And I remember watching a zebra that gave birth, and it had a stillbirth, and for like 4 days, it was in Africa, and 4 days it stayed around its dead fawn, and then eventually just walked off, you know, and obviously mourning, and eventually walked off, and its whole herd had gone, and it had its mourning time. But then the same herd also passed through a river, and with the river crossings and the crocodiles in the river, they all obviously, some don't make it, some learn harder than others for where to go, which way to go, and what way's best. And for the ones that don't make it, you know, their losses, their loved one that's lost in that process. And just like they do when they get chased by a lion, you just see them look at it. They've had to get across this river and swum as equally as close to the croc, but the croc selected the one behind it, you know, another zebra's fawn, and it has to just shake it off and, oh, well, no getting that one back and carry on. And that's the difference in the animal life compared to the stuff we put value on is the fact that, you know, there's another year to give birth to another fawn, and even though you can have your daughter or your sister and your mother and all that in the same pack or harem or pride or whatever that is, you know, it's not like how we have it where it's an 18-year commitment and you might have a couple, but there's, you know, there's not just that other litter coming through. So having to make what you have matter, and then choosing to make what you have matter. And it just, to me, it's, you can dwell on it, but eventually you've got to move on, you know. There's going to be a whole lot of waves that will come through of emotion and feeling, and you've got to choose which one to grab and which one's the most useful at the time, and to then go with that. Sometimes it's okay just to sit through a couple of sets, but you've got to grab another one and carry on, really. So just what you're making matter is really the thing, each point of every day. And like, no matter, like, we have a job as something you get a financial reward from in today's society, but you've got different parts, different jobs in each area of your life. You know, you play a different role, and it's at each point choosing which one you do, choosing which role you're playing, and choosing how efficient you are at each role. You know, if you're gonna, because I was thinking about this, is in a way we're not far off the business, because our body is a business. We have our resources, we create a product or a service, and we deliver that to each area of our life. And so we've got how many different businesses running effectively. You know, you've got your incomings, your outgoings, how efficient you are in each part. You've got your resources, you've got your tools that you utilize at each moment, being physical or mental tools, and then you've got your plans, your goals, or your outcomes for then the day, the hour, the week, month, year, 5 year, you know, plans, outcomes, and goals. And then for what part, how you're applying that at each part of your moment of existence in that day. And to think like that can be a complicated way to look at it in some way, but then it can break it down in another, because you've got to make a choice to be efficient at it, or to be meaningful at it. Otherwise, like you said, Shanen, each part of your whānau has a different part to play in a mourning process, and that's just a mourning process, a grieving, you know. They've also got each part to play in another process of life, you know, with their own whānau, with their actual job, and then with everyone else, and they're part of society. And for me, it is just that, you know, you've got to step forward and step into and apply yourself. Because if you don't apply yourself, not just you can miss out, but others can miss out too. If you weren't 100%, you know, if you called in sick for that day.
Yeah, it affects other people.
Yeah.
Whether you show up or whether you don't show up.
And that does happen. I mean, like, you know, when someone, there's two ways to look at it. If someone isn't managing, they're either dropping the ball, like in a whole system of a family or a business, someone's not coping and they drop the ball, you know. And if they haven't talked about they're not coping, then no one ever got the chance to help them catch the ball. You know, like if that was metaphorically for a workload or a job load, or, you know, I mean, I haven't fired any of my body parts except for a finger, you know.
Well, it did make the cut, eh?
I was just following Alex's rationale, and I was thinking, yeah, fuck, what am I going to fire? You're not working.
You're laid off. This isn't even a redundancy.
But within the rationale of all conversation and what's useful, how we get through our day with conversations, with phone calls, that's up to us at that time, depending on values and what many things. So I mean, it's beautiful. Thanks, mate.
No,
It is, yeah. It is a tapestry of just a whole lot of stuff out, and yet the focus right now is right here. Until I think of a future or a past, the actual focus is right here. So,
because there's many people, there is a lot of people, I believe, that are so integral, or there's health and safety in their work, like real health and safety, not like they're going to break a nail. They can't take their eye off the ball. They'll get information and they'll park it. It just gets parked. And from what and then you just carry on. I've been a bit like that as well. So, there's no one right way, eh?
No, I guess it's the uniqueness of us. Underlying thought is, how do we want to be during something?
One thing's for sure is that useful or not useful, conversation's the key.
And I feel like it's knowing yourself. Actually being willing to be more open-minded. This is it for me, is being willing to be more open-minded to other offerings, other value sets, beliefs. And as I go through those, being also kind with myself during that process, and then having the conversations that are constructive and useful. If that matters to someone, that matters to me.
Yeah.
It matters to me that I can be constructive and leaving you as best imprint I can at the final end. Going through, I mean, if I use any NLP process in this, some people will run at a challenge, like they don't mind conflict. They'll just actually go right directly to the conflict, deal with it, get it over with, so they can move on in life. Yeah.
Like Puppy does that. He just goes to the conflict.
So they'll just direct. It's a sort of information. There's a problem, go to it, sort it out, and move on. But there's another way of processing too, and that would be away from conflict. And so that sort of person really does not like to deal with conflict. They're totally they don't want to be in disharmony with people. Then there'll be another process, which is this one's a little bit more confusing. It's like away from harmony. So the moment something becomes harmonious, someone will create a conflict in the environment, because actually they like conflict. They're not into harmony. And then there'll be another version of it. These are meta programs that I'm talking about in NLP, master prac level normally. And then there's people who are towards harmony. They're willing to do conflict in order to truly get to a harmonious outcome. And all those four that I mentioned, although they sound a little similar, are actually, their process of doing it is very different. None of all the four is right and none of it is wrong. There's simply approaches to life. So if you have a towards harmony, so you're willing to go through conflict in order to get to harmony, and you're with somebody who will, let's say, is away from harmony, so every time something gets settled, they'll miss it up. They'll make sure that something else happens in order for it to be a little bit disruptive again, because their brain and their body understands that disruption. You can imagine that the conversation can get very murky. If you have two people who are willing to go head on head from a conflict level, they're like, I want to sort this out now, I want to sort this out now. Bang, 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 bang. okay, these are the clarities, this is how it is, let's move forward from here. Or you have two people who are just totally away from conflict. They're not going to talk about it. It'll almost be denied. It'll be an underlying feeling or sense in the household or in the business environment or something like that. And those things may never, ever get addressed. So those are just some examples of conversations that count, fit a little bit inside of those ways of processing. So you have great blends of, it's a lot of conversation, but that is different sorts, the way people will sort themselves through conflict.
Yeah.
Or not.
Or not.
Yeah.
Depending on what matters.
That's right, or what we're making matter. And we're coming to the end of our hour.
Yes.
What is useful? What is useful or not useful? What is your summary? Or what is your offering to bring this to a nice, tidy end?
Oh, so for me, I've just got Donald Trump running through my body going, if you don't pick your socks up and perform, you're fired.
Oh, from The Apprentice?
Yep.
Why are you letting Donald Trump run through the body?
Because it's really fucking funny. And then I refer back to that thing that said in 2002, if you freaking knew that this was going to happen and Donald Trump was going to be the, that was funny. And I'm choosing to be humorous right now. I think it's funny because he is the president of the USA and it's hilarious. And he's fired lots of people.
Thank you.
And I'm thinking, oh yeah, well, I've got to beat Alex up the hill. And not because he lets me. You're fired. Oh, okay. So, no, for real, conversations is just, we can be afraid of them. We can be humoured with them. And, we can boldly go into a conversation without knowing the facts. And, don't be afraid of them. If you're having conversation with good people, you'll always have good conversation.
Yeah, I feel I've got to have a conversation with someone, but I'll only do it face to face. So it's just frustrating in what we're going through at the moment. Because I don't know all the facts and I like to be empowered when I have a conversation because I feel I can deal with most things towards a good outcome level. That just fucks me off, so I have to wait. And then I can just let it not exist or choose for it to exist the whole time and overrun me. But I think I'm just going to be like that zebra at the top of the cliff that goes to its mate. Oh fuck! Oh, see you, mate. For now.
Yeah.
On you, bro.
My take from actually all of the conversation is the people who are around you that we choose in life to have around us because they're the ones that we make matter, that we care for, that we let into our deep processing and our living of life, if that makes sense. They're really quite an essential conscious choice. And I'm delighted in my life that, you get put into lockdown, that the people that I have close within my field are people I really want to be with. And that's really exciting because I do know of a couple of situations of people that actually were at the point where they didn't want to be in that area and then they had 4 weeks lockdown. So, the people we have around us really in our field that will uplift, support, challenge, question, entertain, and be there in those hard moments and ask for them in those hard moments. I feel deeply about the fact that they actually matter in this kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah, another great conversation, another great discussion. My take home is based around the spanner that you chucked out, Karyn, and thank you for that spanner that you chucked into our conversation, and it's got me reflecting on some of the learnings that I may not have been consciously aware of, and finding usefulness in the stuff that I did take on, and then looking at in terms of approaches or how to deal with information, but then also has got me now conscious about the example that I'm setting or what I'm creating when difficult situations or difficult discussions happen with our family. The unconscious messaging I'm putting out to my children or out to my family and how I deal with situations, just reflecting on that. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you all, Alex and Boxer, for your shares. I enjoyed today. Another great day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just see if I can find the end of that. All right, guys. See ya.
See ya.